Vadim opened the car door, trying not to spill hot coffee. He looked into the social network on his phone, but there was little news and they did not cause much interest. Then the man put down the gadget, took a sip of coffee and closed his eyes with pleasure. It's the very thing for an American to finally wake up. Since the morning Vadim felt strange. He started a legal vacation, but the body habitually turned on at 6 in the morning and did not want to sleep off after a sleepless night spent at the laptop. The man tossed and turned for 10 minutes, and then he got up. There were no global plans for a vacation, but Vadim was not used to sitting in one place, so he hurriedly had breakfast and ran for coffee to the vending machine in the store at home. Now the man was lazily pondering whether to go to the mall to buy new shoes, or leave this hateful procedure for the last day of rest. His gaze slid lazily along the street. The working day has already begun, most people have fled from the streets to their workplaces. There was only one old lady standing at an empty bus stop. Somehow she reminded Vadim of his grandmother, the same energetic, in a bright dress, with grey hair combed like a dandelion. You look, and it seems that the wind is about to blow and the whole magnificent hairstyle will fly away. Vadim's grandmother was wonderful. It was she who nursed the boy after a car accident many years ago. Then Vadim was driving a brand new car with his dad. Suddenly, a drunk driver jumped out, his car crashed into Dad and Vadim's car at full speed. The father died on the spot, the boy lost consciousness from a strong blow. Only later he was told that the car caught fire. People ran around, but did not dare to approach. Suddenly, one man who was walking by rushed forward. He stubbornly bent the twisted metal, ignoring the red-hot surface and the flames around. Finally, the stranger managed to pull out little Vadim. The boy was immediately surrounded by a crowd, an ambulance siren sounded in the distance. And the man left the rescued child to caring people and quietly went his own way. When they remembered about him, no one could tell where the savior had gone. Vadim was in the hospital for a long time. In addition to a concussion, a broken leg and minor bruises, he had a large burn on half of his side. The doctors did not know if the boy would survive, but the body turned out to be strong. Meanwhile, Dad was buried. Mom moved all her things to her grandmother so as not to pay for a rented apartment, and she plunged into work up to her ears. She took additional tasks, stayed up until the night, just to earn money for her son's medicines. When Vadim was released home, he was all wrapped up in bandages and could not walk because of the cast. The children in the yard immediately ridiculed the clumsy boy, who was dragged in the arms of his mother and grandmother. Then Vadim shut himself in, did not want to move, eat, go outside. The grandmother seriously took up her grandson. She forced her to read aloud to her, motivating her with poor eyesight, asked for help in cooking, as her hands hurt, and then with a happy face she brought crutches from a neighbor. Vadim fiercely refused to go outside, but his grandmother burst into tears, said that a pack of stray dogs had started in the park, which rush at lonely passers-by. To go to the market for groceries, it was necessary to pass through the park. Grandma was very afraid to go alone. She asked her grandson to help until he agreed. Naturally, they did not meet formidable packs of dogs in the park, but they walked all the way to the market and back. Vadim took a breath of fresh air, and on the way back, local boys came up to him to get acquainted. It turned out they weren't that evil. The man always remembered those times with warmth. Grandma literally forced him to move on. He soon got to his feet and, apart from an ugly scar on his side, nothing reminded him of that terrible accident. Grandma also kept asking for help around the house. "Nuba," the boy moaned. "I'm running outside to play with the guys." "You'll have time," Grandma waved away. "Remember, if you can help in any way, then this is more important than all other things. Don't be too lazy to spend a couple of minutes to help. Good is always rewarded with good." Vadim grew up a long time ago, his grandmother died, and the words were remembered. The man looked at the old woman again. She raised her hand in an attempt to stop passing cars, but not a single driver stopped. The woman was looking at her wristwatch with concern, apparently she was late. The stop remained empty. Buses collected people in the morning, and then took a long break. Most likely, the old lady was late for her flight. When another car drove by, Vadim resolutely squeezed an empty coffee cup and started the engine. The shoes could wait. But the old lady, it seems, could not wait. The man stopped near the bus stop and waved his hand invitingly. The woman, despite her advanced age, deftly jumped into the salon. "Oh, son, thank you," the passenger immediately wailed. "I was walking home when I had a cramp in my leg. While it's gone, while I've stretched my muscle. I came to the bus stop, the bus has already left, and I need to go to the hospital. I'll give you a ride, I'm just in that direction," the man lied. The passenger turned out to be talkative, but now the man was not annoyed, but rather amused. He didn't understand how he got involved in the conversation. The right hospital was located at the other end of the city, the car was passing through the very center, and Margarita Ivanovna actively commented on everything she saw in the window. So Vadim found out that everything from A to Z in the store once had the largest meat shop in the city. The queue here was occupied from 5 in the morning, but the meat was always fresh. The man remembered that his grandmother really went somewhere after dark once every 2 weeks, and returned with ribs, shoulder blade and fillet. A little further on, graduates always bathed in the fountain. The statue that stood in the center of the pool was missing one arm. This has always been the case for as long as Vadim could remember. I even went out loud that it was the original idea of the sculptor to artificially age the statue, to make it like Nika of Samothrace, only without wings and with a head. However, Margarita Ivanovna confessed in a whisper that she knew the scoundrel who broke his arm. It was her classmate who wanted to climb on the shoulders of the statue. It turned out that the tradition of bathing in this fountain has been more than 60 years, and the broken arm lies buried under the nearest oak tree. Margarita's classmates were very scared then and decided to cover their tracks. Vadim was already ready for another incredible story when the old lady fell silent. The car stopped at a traffic light, and she stared at the tall building of the university. "And this is my alma mater," Margarita Ivanovna said with a mixture of pride and bitterness. "I studied here, met my husband, then interned, worked. And when the son was born, everything dragged him here on his hands. He also spent his childhood in these corridors." "Do you see your son often?" Vadim asked. "I bring him flowers every 2 weeks," the old lady replied. "Even in winter, although they freeze immediately. He was a pilot, there was a malfunction in the plane, his son took him away from residential buildings, but did not have time to eject, but he saved others. I'm sorry for you. It's not worth it," the old lady waved it off, "it's the old thing." The man fell silent awkwardly. An oppressive silence hung in the cabin. The traffic light turned green, and Vadim breathed a sigh of relief. Houses and squares floated by again. Margarita Ivanovna sat pensive, and then suddenly smiled. With this smile, all the years she had lived seemed to drain from her face, she suddenly looked 10 years younger. "Do you see the bench under the lime tree? She's special. My husband proposed to me here. Right on my birthday. Today is 55 years since then." "Wait," Vadim frowned, "what is it? Is it your birthday today?" "Yes," the old lady nodded. "Even at my age, it happens. But I'll tell you a story." The old one was saying something, but Vadim was no longer listening to her. He suddenly thought that if the woman's son was alive, he would definitely come to her with a bouquet of flowers. But he would never congratulate his mother again. Out of the corner of his eye he saw a woman with bouquets near the crossing. Vadim found a parking spot, stopped and turned around to the passenger. "Excuse me for a moment, please wait, we'll go further now." He jumped out of the car before he heard the answer, and went to the flower girl. The flowers were the most ordinary, apparently, the woman cut them from her garden. But the bouquet looked cute, and Vadim bought it without hesitation. The man approached the passenger seat and opened the door and handed flowers to Margarita Ivanovna. "Happy birthday." The old lady looked at the bouquet in surprise, and then suddenly burst into tears. "Well, what are you? Vadim spoke absently. He didn't know at all what to do in such a situation. "Sorry, son," the passenger wiped her tears, "no one has given me flowers since my husband died. The 6th year has gone, you remind me of him in some way. He was always worried about a stranger like that." The old lady with a warm smile began to remember her husband, clutching a bright bouquet to her chest. Vadim took the driver's seat and continued on his way to the hospital. He listened to the stories of Margarita Ivanovna and seemed to see her husband live. Here he goes home from work, in a hurry. Today he and his wife agreed to go to the theater, but they didn't get out together very often. The house was just around the corner, their windows are already visible. And suddenly, towards Granny with 2 huge bags, she puffs, grunts, barely walks. The man looks out of the window for a second, sighs and approaches Grandma. They never got to the theaters that day. The husband came only an hour later, but with a huge bouquet, which Grandma, grateful for the help, cut in her garden. Here is a husband and wife walking along the embankment. They are festively dressed in bright things. Nearby, a boy is playing with a puppy. The dog gets tangled in his paws and falls off the parapet right into the dirty, duckweed-covered water. The boy is crying, everyone around him is crying, but they are not in a hurry to help. The man apologizes to his wife for his appearance and immediately jumps into the river for the dog. The water is below the knees, but even that would be enough for the puppy to drown. He pulls out the dog, the dress, trousers and shoes are hopelessly ruined, but the boy smiles, hugging the dirty and frightened little dog to himself. Here is the spouse thoughtfully looking out the window. There is a thunderstorm outside, a downpour, a squall wind bends the trees to the ground. Suddenly he takes off and, as he was in his slippers, runs outside. Surprised Margarita Ivanovna looks out the window. There, a tree was blown up by a hurricane right on a private house on the other side of the street. The tree is old, heavy, large. She broke through the roof and blocked the doors. A man is running in sneakers on the water, which is an endless stream along the roadway. He's soaked all over, but he doesn't notice it. Climbs over the fence, knocks on the windows. Together with the owner of the house, he helps a woman and children to get out through the window. That evening Margarita Ivanovna brewed one cup of tea after another, calming the terrified neighbors. We all slept together on the blankets laid right on the floor. And in the morning, together with other neighbors, they cleaned the tree and repaired the house. Later, a new tree was planted in place of the old one. To this day, grown-up children bring apples from it to a woman in gratitude for having sheltered her on that terrible night. My Volodya always said that good is rewarded with good. Margarita Ivanovna smiled. Sometimes he didn't feel sorry for himself, just to help others. I even saved a child's life once. That's just Slava didn't want gratitude and ran away. He told me later that the accident was terrible. The driver was killed on the spot, and the boy was trapped in a mangled car. Everything started to burn, but no one dared to approach. And Volodya ran. He knew that if not now, then the child could not be saved. Pulled it out. And then? Vadim asked in a hoarse voice. As soon as I saw that the ambulance had arrived, I left. The old woman shrugged her shoulders. He bent the metal hot and with his bare hands. I burned all my palms and forearms. The blisters were terrible. We treated him for a long time, but he just waved it off, saying, the main thing is that the baby remained alive. The road before Vadim's eyes swam strangely. He hastily blinked, noisily sucked in air and parked near the hospital. And tell me, how long ago was it? He asked in a trembling voice. About 17 years ago, the old lady replied. Vadim took off in an instant, opened the passenger seat and fell to his knees in front of the surprised Margarita Ivanovna. He began to kiss her hands and, without even trying to stop the tears flowing from her eyes. Thank you, he said. The old woman's surprised look was replaced by an understanding one. She smiled, patted Vadim's hair and said, after all, my Vladimir Alexandrovich was right. He has been gone for a long time, and the good he did has now returned to me. Don't thank me, I didn't pull you out of a burning car. And thanks for bringing me. Your goodness will definitely respond to you in life, too, you'll see. The old lady had long since disappeared in the doorway of the hospital, and Vadim was still sitting near the car. After all, his grandmother was right. If you can help in any way, help. This is more important than all other things in the world. And good will always be rewarded with good.